So Jessica, can you, while we're waiting, can you tell us a little bit about the available social media and support that we offer?
Yeah, so we have the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, you can look that up. That group is almost to 35,000 members at this point. So it's a pretty big group, great way to connect with other families that are using the curriculum.
What's the focus of that group?
So the Moms of Masterbooks group on Facebook is specifically focused on just the curriculum. So we try to keep the conversation really focused specifically on curriculum in that group. And part of that reason is because it's so big, if it gets off track and we start talking about how we organize our schoolrooms, or if we start talking about, where did you get that map? Then what ends up happening is we lose track of what the purpose of the group is, and people actually don't get their curriculum questions answered. So we want to make sure we stay on track. And so that's part of the reason why the group runs the way it does. And then we also have the app that you can get in the App Store, Masterbooks, just search Masterbooks. And in there, we have a place to connect for community, but we also have groups there where you can talk about how do you organize your schoolroom? How do you organize and plan out your year? We have a photography group there. We have a chit chat group. A lot of people like to talk about their menu plans for the week. And so lots of different groups there. So you can kind of get a little bit off just the curriculum and connect with other Masterbooks families while talking about other topics.
Yeah, the nice thing about the app is that users can decide to join or not join specific topics. And then that way you're not stuck having to listen to all this chatter about things that you're not interested in. And that was a big problem in the Facebook group. And we had so many complaints that we decided to move all of that discussion into a format where people could opt in or out.
Yes.
And I think too, as the group grew, because now it's over 34,000 moms in that group, as that group has grown, Jessica and Kristen know firsthand the number of posts and comments that have to be monitored. Just talking about Masterbooks curriculum alone was in the tens of thousands that a month that we'd be up. And in the early days, not that long ago, Facebook didn't really have the tools for us to even manage that. So like we would be up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning watching threads, sometimes, go completely off topic or even go wrong direction.
Kind of hostile sometimes, or
people
are
would
getting
disagree.
they're getting their feelings hurt and big fights are breaking out. Yeah. So opening up the app was fantastic. It was just a really good way to direct some of those conversations in a way that people can still have community without filling everybody else's feet up. And, all of our admins and moderators do a fantastic job making sure that everybody gets answers. We try not to let any slip through the crack. I'm sure it happens occasionally just because of the massive volume, but we do work really hard at trying to make sure that people get their questions answered. We give opportunities, the authors can jump in there, and they often do. And so it's just a really good way for people to connect.
All right, well, we have some questions, so we're going to get started.
Okay.
I would like to introduce ourselves because I didn't do that last time. I am Randy Pratt. I am the VP of Marketing at New Leaf Publishing Group and Masterbooks. My department, I like to say, is the magic that keeps everything sparkly and wonderful. I also am joined by my co-worker, Kristen Pratt, my sister, and she's my wife.
Sister.
And she is, I don't know,
Branding
curriculum manager. And what do you do at Masterbooks?
Well, I help in the process that's pre-contract. So that's working to get new submissions to the point that we can get a contract and then get going on that. And then I work with editorial to make sure that the curriculum is developing the way that it needs to, that it meets the master book standards, meets our educational goals and that sort of thing. And then I also help on the customer service marketing side of things, or the brand management in the Facebook group and the app.
Yes.
And I'm an author as well.
Yes. Okay, so Jessica, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, so I am I'm a part of the marketing team as well. And I am the social media manager. So I kind of oversee the Moms of Masterbooks group, and there's quite a few different things that I do, but that's kind of the title.
I love on one of your profiles somewhere, your title is social media wrangler, which
Yeah.
has kind of been the role that you definitely have been in. So
Jessica makes sure that there's plenty of coverage and all sorts of behind the scenes.
yeah.
And then also I'm an author too. So, you know.
Yes, where faith grows.
Yes, in bookstores
Soon.
soon. All right, so Jennifer said, can you explain the subject sets and the create a bundle option? How does create a bundle work? Jessica, I'll throw that one to you.
Okay, so the way that it works is that the curriculum, all the curriculum sets are 26% off on the website all year round. And a subject set just simply means whatever the core material is required, you know, that's required for that course. So for instance, like math lessons level 3, the only thing that you need is the math lessons 3 book. So that's considered a subject set all on its own. But then you have something like, let me think, like elementary zoology, and that course has several books with it. So in order to qualify as a subject set, you need to have purchased all of the books together. And it's really easy to tell on the website what a subject set is, because you'll see that 1, 2, 3, those blocks up at the top right-hand corner, whenever it is a subject set. So the way the Create a Bundle works is, we know that all homeschool families are different, and we all have different interests and different types of classes and courses that we prefer. So we do have the grade level bundles that make things a little pretty easy, but if you like to create your own bundle, you can get that same discount. So like I said, it's 26% off individually, but if you do at least 3 subject sets, you get an extra 5% off. And so you just need to get at least three courses that have that 1, 2, 3 up at the top. And it doesn't matter. It can be across any subjects. You could actually get 3 of the exact same subject set. So if you bought 3 of math lessons 3, that would qualify. So 3 or more. This doesn't have to be done in sets of 3. As long as you have at least 3 in your cart, you get that extra 5% off.
Yep. So you can earn 30% total on 3 or more subject sets. The full grade sets, 30%. In the contiguous US, shipping over, shipping over
75.
Yep, $75 is free. Sorry, we got a lot of things going off here. And so really good value to be able to get that. And we work really hard to keep our prices extremely low for a year's worth of curriculum. So,
and the 5% back in reward points too. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, that's to me, that's huge, because everything that you can, everything that you buy, we put 5% back into the reward points. So for flash sales or anything like that, people are able to use that. So, okay. So the next one I'm going to throw to Kristen. Dana asked, what device do you have for homeschooling through high school years? We've been with Masterbooks 4 years now. Thank you very much, Dana. I feel confident with elementary middle school years.
We have helpers behind the scene, and they have questions, and so
They're popping up.
they're popping up in front of the text that Randy needs to read.
But heading into high school years is a new territory for us. There's some anxiety creeping in. Kristen?
Well, here's what helps me with the high school years, what helps keep my anxiety down. And that the first thing is planning. So what I like to do is starting in the 8th grade years, I start just in my head thinking about my student that's going to be entering high school and just kind of looking at some courses that I think that they might enjoy. Just kind of thinking about it as I'm looking through the catalog and trying to determine what is going to be a good approach for that particular student. And so the next thing that I like to do is I like to prepare a plan for high school. I usually consult HSLDA and look for the type of diploma. They have 3 different levels suggested. And so I usually do the college bound level. And then what I do is I start filling in their recommendations with the courses that I'm going to plan to use for my student. And so it's flexible, we can change it every single year. We can, make a course correction, but it at least gives me a plan in hand when I'm entering those years. So that's the first thing that I like to do. The next thing that I think is really important is to be careful not to overwhelm the student. When I'm making my plan, I like to bulk up more the 9th and 10th grade years versus the 11th and 12th, because what I find is that by 11th and 12th grade, at least in my family, my children are starting to work. They're starting to have more independence, interests at church. For instance, our 11th grader is going into 12th grade in the new school year here. He has started volunteering running sound at church. And so he's gone more. And so it gets harder and harder for them to actually fit school in once they hit that 11th and 12th grade level. So I would recommend really thinking about that and, just kind of putting more weight in those 9th and 10th grade years, but be careful not to overwhelm them. So that would be the second thing that I would recommend. The third thing is I would look at the subjects that you feel are going to be the hardest for your student. And so generally speaking, math is going to be right up there. Math and science are the 2 subjects that tend to be pretty heavy hitting in high school. And what I would do is look for as much help as possible. And so I utilize every video and academy course that's available. So, I've gone over, instead of getting the videos and utilizing the videos for my kids, now I just have them do everything right through the academy. But I do believe we still have some videos available.
We have some. They're phasing out, but we
Yeah.
still have some.
So if you want the videos that we do have available, get them now. Like Granny said, they're going to be phasing out, but I highly recommend the academy courses. They add a good teaching supplement for those tougher classes. You can do it. God will equip you. So you don't have to be scared or get cold feet. It's very rewarding to get to that point where you are handing your student that diploma and you know that they have a solid grounding in the Word of God. And so there's nothing like it. So I would encourage you to just step forward confidently in it, because you're not relying on your own strength, but you're relying on the power of the Holy Spirit. And so you can do this.
I would add that for high school, if you are not a member of hslda.org, to go and become a member. They have an excellent section on their website devoted to homeschooling through high school, which helps with transcript preparation. So you can see the different types of like vocational transcripts, general transcript, college-bound transcripts, and what the requirements are. And they also have great information on your state. And if you run into any issues in reporting and stuff like that, they're available as well for that. So I think that that's awesome. The masterbooks cumulative record that we have has sample transcript and a transcript that you can keep. And it's really not that difficult as far as you're just tallying up, like they need 4 math credits, 4 language credits, 3 history, 3 or 4 sciences, and some electives. And so as you keep the records, it's not that difficult, especially with the academy. Like in the academy, Kate's courses for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 I mean, that makes it a cakewalk. And the courses are, I mean, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I would also contact, if your student is interested in apprenticing or has college aspirations, you just want to find out what the expectations are for the type of diploma that you're going to give.
yeah, just a life prep thing, something we
Mhm.
learned with our oldest. She really wanted to be in missions. And what she was looking to do one time, I just said, well, maybe we need to look at if you're going to go work for, say, Samaritan's Purse or Operation Rescue. And so I looked at the careers and I was shocked because the college that she was looking to attend, they were like, that degree wouldn't allow her to do what she wants to do because that country wouldn't allow her into the country. So if she took a English as a second language type degree or something of that nature, she could actually come in. So we recommend that all the time is check the university that you think that you would be attending and look at their admission requirements. And then, what are their career goals to make sure that you can tailor that and then just build it from there.
And be very careful about what college or university you plan to send your student to.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Definitely.
don't want their faith destroyed.
Okay, Jessica, I'm going to throw a real quick one to you about reward points. What are reward points and how do I qualify to use them?
Okay, so reward points are simply points that you get back on every order that you make at masterbooks.com. You want to make sure that you are signed into your account when you put your order through. And when you do that, you'll get 5% back in reward points. So if you spend $100, you're going to get $5 worth of points back. Each point is worth 1 cent. So $5 of points means you're going to see 500 points in your account. And then the next time when you go to make an order, when you go to check out, you'll see there's an option, there's a little box that you can check that you want to apply your reward points that you've already accumulated towards your next order. So you get to choose that each time you check out if you have reward points added up. But yeah, as long as you're signed into your account, you are accumulating those points every time that you make a purchase. And those points are accumulated based on your subtotal. So that's before your taxes and your shipping.
But I believe you can actually use reward points towards shipping.
Yeah, so your reward points can be used toward anything on your order. The whole total can be discounted by using reward points if you have enough to do that.
When we migrated over the website, I was pleasantly surprised at how many reward points families were using and the savings that it was to them. So I love that we can do that.
It's a real blessing.
Yeah, and something that I really think is really neat. So the $75 is kind of that threshold that gets you free shipping within the contiguous US. If you have, let's say your order is $100, so you hit that free shipping threshold, and then you have $30 of reward points. So now it brings you down to $70. You still get free shipping.
Nice. Masterbooks is very generous.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jill said, Kristen, we'll let you take this because it's language lessons. When you talked about the language lessons for living education series, you said the goal by the end of that was that the student can write a really good paragraph. How do I know my students' paragraphs are good? What are some of the things to look for in a good paragraph or to encourage my student to include so their paragraph is a good one? Thanks.
Well, I am going to say that's a little bit subjective because some students are just going to be naturally better than others. I mean, obviously we want a good paragraph, but some kids are just going to be more capable of writing a better paragraph, which is why when you're transferring into the next series, the writing strands, I still recommend that you take the placement test because we want the students to actually start where they're at, not where we want them to be. So that's really, really important. But a good paragraph that I would expect them to have, you want to make sure that they are consistently using proper capitalization and punctuation. That's for starters. That's harder than what it should seem to get some kids to pay attention to. You know, some of my kids go into high school and I'm still telling them, I'm still handing the paper back and saying, go do it again. You know, at that point, you know how to do it. You're just not doing it. And so they really need to be paying attention when they're writing and making sure that they're handing in good, solid work. So check the capitalization, check the punctuation, just for you know, the starters. But then you also want to make sure that they're using different sentence structures, because they have learned that in language lessons. And writing is communication. And so their paragraphs should be interesting. They should be something that you're enjoying reading. If it's boring, if it's the exact same sentence structure and they're not adding any adjectives, any adverbs, they're not thinking creatively, then you want to work on that. They should be able to write a decent paragraph, at least 5 to 7 sentences. It should be cohesive. They should be able to write, and I don't want to sound too harsh, but a perfect paragraph. They should be able to read through their paragraph and recognize where they need to fix mistakes. So their paragraph doesn't have to be perfect the first time through, but they should be able to go back through it and recognize where they need to make improvements, or to have you point some things out, give them tips on how they could make the paragraph better, and have them be able to apply that to a revision of their paragraph.
Good.
I want to add something just onto that. I have 2 students using language lesson 6 this year, and I have noticed one of the aspects of it is to look at the 10-minute Bible journey and then pick the 6 main things from there. And for my kids, what I have seen is their paragraph writing has really, really improved because of that specific assignment. Because what they're doing is they're looking through that and they're pulling out the main things that need to be discussed. And then they're crafting much better sentences that work together cohesively.
That was a great point, because I actually gave that assignment by design to start training the brain to start thinking in that way. Because no matter what you're doing where there's communication, you're having to file that information. And if you're going to remember it, you can't remember every little detail, but you need to remember the highlights. And so even in our discussion here, when we're reading a question, we have to file that as we're answering it. When you're sitting in church and you're listening to a sermon, you have to be able to take that information and summarize it in your mind. And it's really helpful if you write that down.
Okay. So Jessica, let's throw Cheyenne's question to you. What is the best curriculum to use for a first grader who needs extra help in handwriting and early reading, such as blending 3-letter words? Any tips for a new mom in homeschooling?
Okay, well, I would say that you have found the perfect place. Our first grade program starts with Foundations Phonics for the first semester of the year, and that begins the blending process. So if you're beginning first grade and you're saying, oh, my child needs a little bit of help with blending, that's right where we're at. So Foundations Phonics really works on those blending skills, and you'll see from the beginning, you're working on individual letters. So the handwriting is you're going to have practice with handwriting through that. And then the second half of the year uses language lessons level 1. And still through that, you'll see the blending and those reading skills continue to develop through the year. And there are a lot of extra things in the back that you can use if you want additional handwriting help. You can either make copies of pages so you can get extra practice in, or you can stick pages into page protectors and use like dry erase markers and get practice that way. But the courses for first grade seem like they're going to fit exactly what you're looking for.
Can I add that for some students, even depending on development, the age, if you haven't done Simply K or the Math K, My Story K, Let's Talk Science K, you may consider doing that, even if you did it at an accelerated rate, just to build confidence. And they focus so much on the whole child approach because it's big on motor skills and stamina. And a lot of times, first grade, kindergarten, first, second grade are so, like the spectrum is so wide as to when a student is ready. So, and I think Jessica's advice is awesome. And don't be afraid if you have to even go a little bit slower. Some students, they'll catch up. All of our
Oh,
kids,
yeah.
even the ones that have gone a little bit slower starting out, caught up. We had no problem with them catching up.
They
Kind of on,
actually,
oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Kind of on what you said, Randy. I have a first grader this year, and his stamina is a little bit less than maybe my other kids have been in the past. And so we are looking forward to using My Story K. So we can kind of get social studies in, but a little bit gentler than jumping right into level 1. So, make your homeschool curriculum work for you. Don't feel like, oh, because they said this is level 1, this is what I'm supposed to do. That's the perks of homeschooling. You get to cater to your child's needs. So change things up. I'm using My Story K with my first grader this year. You just work with what your child needs.
Yeah. I throw it around a little bit, but homeschool the student you have, not the student you wish you had, or the student people pressure you to have. Sometimes there's a lot of peer pressure that your student needs to be doing something because other kids are, or they question you. Push that aside because every student is individual and you are your student's advocate to help govern them. We've talked a lot about it. It came up again today. Angela used it. Would you rather drink, from a sip at a time or from a garden hose and full blast in your face? That's what tends to happen, especially at that ages. So you can turn down the volume and give it to them at the level they can handle.
Right. And not only has our experience proven this to be true, but the studies prove it to be true, that when you give students developmentally appropriate materials, they actually go farther faster.
Yes. Okay, Jennifer asked, I know what my answer to this is, so I'm going to answer last, but I want to each of us do it. So we'll start with Jessica. What would your top homeschool teaching tips be for a new homeschool family? What would your top?
Oh my, you're like really putting me on the spot. You're making me go first.
I have an answer.
What would your older self tell your younger self would be the way I would phrase it.
I don't know. I feel like it's so specific to everyone's individual situation. I think some people have struggles in some areas and other people have struggles in other areas. So typically, I think my encouragement has to do with specifically, what. So I guess my encouragement is kind of similar to what we just said. Don't feel pressured that your homeschool has to look like someone else's. Be comfortable with figuring out your own methods of doing things and your own, just your own system of it. And don't feel like you have to do what your neighbor does or what the person in that Facebook group told you to do, or the lady who's been homeschooling for 20 years at your church. That's one of the things that really kind of bothers me the most when I hear sometimes older experienced homeschoolers talking about, well, you need to do these 3 things or else you're going to fail. I really disagree with that. I think everyone has to figure out what works for them. The main thing is don't put so much pressure on yourself. Like, be willing to learn as you go what works and be willing to change things up. As an example, this year, I'm scheduling out 6 weeks at a time, and then we have a week break, and I'm going to schedule the next 6 weeks. And I talked to my kids and I said, what we're going to do every single week that we have off? We're going to look at how did the last 6 weeks go? Do we need to make changes? Do we need to make adjustments? And we're going to learn throughout the year how we're going to do best. And so I think that's just be willing to be flexible.
Yeah, I like that. It's really, really important when you're starting out, because you have these ideas of what it's going to be like, but often we don't have the child that we think we do. And so we do have to, and we don't always have the same year. You know, years can be different. And so by having that flexibility, you can flow with it instead of panicking over it. But when my advice would be, don't think you can do this in your own strength. You really have to press in. You really have to pray, ask the Lord for wisdom. You know, take those pauses to really seek him when it comes to each of your children. You know, we don't, you know, as homeschool moms, I find that I'm pulled in so many different directions. You know, it's really hard to know all things about every student. They're all so different. We have 9 children. Every one of them are different. I don't know how that happens. You know, I mean, 8 of our children are by birth. You know, they've all been with us since either from birth to 6 months old. They've all been little, tiny, same parents, same everything. And they're so different. God has just gifted them with just different strengths and weaknesses. So I'm not the expert on my children, but their creator is. And so he gives us the wisdom. He provides the tools. We have to seek him though. We have to stop and really ask him to provide the things that we need. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's rest. Sometimes it's a special knowledge that we need. And so that would be my best tip. In addition to Jessica's, to be flexible. I think that those 2 things are super important.
Yeah, I'm going to add to both of yours. I think what Jessica's saying, the masterbooks community, by and large, exists. There's a lot of free thinkers. We make an assumption that the users of masterbooks curriculum are smart enough to create solutions that work. So while we give you a solid solution that will help you, we also trust that if you feel your child needs a little something extra or a video supplement or a vacation trip or something like that, that you'll do that. And so in addition to making it yours, we trust you to do that and we encourage you to do that. We don't believe one size fits all and at all. And even there are times where we know that masterbooks isn't the perfect fit for a family in every subject. And so we encourage you to find solutions that work for you.
I often surprise people when I tell them that I don't use language lessons the exact same way with all of our kids. I had 3 students in it, the same level, all in 1 year. And I completely adapted it for each student. So yeah, I mean, I love the language lessons books, but my students are all different. And so my expectations for their writing is different. The way that I help them or don't help them is different. And even the way I tweak the assignments is different, or the schedule.
Yeah. Then I'd like to follow with what you said about asking for wisdom. In the book of James, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask for wisdom, believing that he's received it and he will receive it. The word of God is 100% true. And when you are at a place where you're concerned or anxious or just need wisdom, the best thing you can do is to ask the one who has a complete and total infinite understanding, our creator, God. And to ask him, just give me wisdom. Like I need wisdom in how to set up my homeschool. I need wisdom in how to motivate my student. The best thing you can do is to take advantage of the resource that we have as believers, which is asking for wisdom. So
asking for wisdom and then resting in that.
Yes.
So you take it to the Lord. I've never had him fail me when it comes to that. Never. And so you just take it to him and then you rest and you wait and he will provide.
Yes, he does. Sometimes we're not the way we expect it, and it may not be the answer we even like sometimes, but he knows. That's why we ask him for wisdom. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom isn't hearing what we want to hear. Wisdom is making the right decision. I think my greatest teaching tip, and this is something as a parent, as a husband, in when we pastored at every level is you get what you leave. And I think we have to give ourselves room for growth, but sometimes we expect our children to be these perfect individuals when we're not. And they're just mini sinners like we are. And we have to show grace. We have to have empathy. You know, when I was a young parent, I would demand perfection and I would discipline if I didn't have perfection. And while I would get compliance and I had well-behaved children, I didn't always have their hearts. And I think learning to be like, hey, we're all in this journey together. And even as your kids get older, it gets even more. There are times I had a conversation with one of my kids recently where I had to say, I get this because I'm in the same place. Like I'm having to reprioritize things and work things together. And so we're growing together, but I can never expect my children, you know, if I'm going to be on my phone all day and I'm going to be distracted, not paying attention or present, that's what I've led. That's what I have to expect from my family. And if I want them engaged and present and excited about things, they have to be. Beyond a shadow of doubt, I can tell you that every time my children's spiritual walk has gone down, it's because my spiritual walk, I've got relaxed in what I'm doing. And so my greatest teaching tip would be that we get what we lead and we have to examine ourselves. And when we see something happening in our families or our children or our churches, that was where I really learned that lesson. One Sunday, it just dawned on me, this church is they're not going to go beyond the leader. And the church had reached the cap of who I was. And if I wanted to see the church begin to grow spiritually, I was really going to have to invest myself. And that was a turning point. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Dana said, sometimes when I post things in the app, I get redirected to a different category. Is there any guidance in how it's organized? Dana, there are some topics, like in community is a very good general place. But then there are specific topics like inspiration or prayer or special needs, where those groups that are targeted are a great place for those individualized conversations, because sometimes they can, you know, everybody subscribes to the groups they're in. So not everybody is interested in special needs or the chapel and praying. So we try to keep things where if there's a certain topic like inspirations where you're posting pictures of your classroom and all of that, we really like that. We just try to keep them going in the categories. And I just want to say with social media, you know, sometimes the team that we have that you're going to meet tomorrow night, I absolutely adore every single one of them. They have been so instrumental in who we are as a company. And they have volunteered unbelievable amounts of hours because they want to support homeschool families and they want to support the kingdom. And sometimes people get offended when we're trying to just manage things and keep order. And the heart of everybody that works at Masterbooks and behind the scenes is 100% to serve and to provide value to the community. So if anytime somebody has asked you if maybe you could post in a category different, the main reason that they're doing it is because they're just trying to make sure that it's easy for people who want to see classroom ideas or things like that. It's easier there than having to try to scroll through a lot of community feeds and to fill that up with that. So it definitely is. I've never seen mean-spiritedness behind the scenes. I've always seen people just trying to make the group provide value and accomplish the purpose of the group.
And it's the same in the Moms of Master Books. When you're directed to take a conversation to the app, it's because the app is better set up for those conversations than Facebook is.
Yes. I'm curious, Jess, this is her name, it starts with a G. But she thinks that G is actually pronounced J. So it would be Jessica Gillenwater. I'm curious, Jessica Gillenwater says, if there will ever be, yeah, I'm right. I was thinking if I got it backwards. I'm curious if there will ever be a Bible elective type course coming out in the future for the older grade levels, like 8th grade and beyond. Kristen?
Yes, that's the short answer. We don't have anything underway right at the moment. We've done a lot of talking about it. We recognize that it is a need. We would love to get that going, but as you can imagine, you know, we have to have the right author. It has to be done really well. And so we have Jessica right now to be working on the younger levels 1 through 6. We just have not been able to jump in and get started on older levels. So that is a yes, it is in our plan. We just do not have anything currently underway.
Yes. And I'll give you some sage advice. How do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. So we have a Bible author who has written level 1 and will continue to write level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And as she writes, she will continue to grow and learn, and the products will continue to improve and be even better. And by the time we get to the point that we need to take another bite, it'll be amazing how wonderful this author will have been prepared.
It's Jessica's fear in her eyes.
Okay.
I think let's get through levels 1 through 6 first.
One bite at a time. We eat the elephant
level
one
one
bite
out.
at a time. Okay, Kelly, this is Kim now, Kelly, says, are there only 3 credits for high school math? Any plans to add another course for students in states who require 4 math credits?
Yes, that's another yes. Again, we actually have some options that we're mulling around. And yeah, we're probably going to have something along the lines of a consumer math before anything else. And so that's probably what you can expect. And I also want to say that we have put out so much curriculum. We do know that we have some places that we still have some holes that we would like to fill, but you know, the last couple of years between issues that we've had with COVID and then just taking on a lot of big projects, we just have not been able to put out maybe quite the volume that we have in past years. So like Algebra 2 was a tremendous undertaking. And so we were able to offer that. But if you've been around Master Books for any time at all, you know that we are always adding new courses and we're always looking for new things. And so we know that we need at least 1 or 2 more math courses in the high school levels. And so that is on our to-do list.
Good. Okay. So Jill said, and I'm going to answer this and then you guys can weigh in, okay? For writing strands during the reading weeks, the questions that ask the student to tell about the theme, the book's message, what the book is trying to teach you, etc. My student often says, I don't know. And then it asks the student if it agrees with what the Bible teaches, which is impossible to answer if she doesn't know what the theme or message is. I've not read the book she is reading for the reading week, so I don't know either. Do you have any suggestions for some good questions that I can ask my student to get her thinking so she can discover a possible theme or message so she can answer those questions? Sometimes the phrasing, like what does the book mean, is a pretty big concept. Something that you could do is ask, what's the takeaway? As you read a paragraph or you read a book or a chapter, sometimes there's certain truths or life lessons that we can take away. And so just to begin looking at what's the takeaway. You could even do it with something very small, like a Facebook post that is maybe inspirational, or a quote that somebody has. You know, like there's a quote that I love about education that says anybody can look at an apple tree and count the number of apples, but who can look at an apple seed and count the number of apples? And so we plant seeds. And so what that says to me is that, you know, every time I plant a seed, I'm getting more. Like that's the takeaway of that quote. And so maybe it's complicated to look at a whole book or a chapter, but you could start practicing with just different things that you see where there's a message being spoken, and find really creative ways to do that, to begin making a connection in the brain. Like when I'm reading something or I'm listening to something, is there an underlying message or a takeaway that I can take from this? These are the things that I would underline in a book. If I was reading a book and something just jumped out and said, this is something you could apply to your life, and I highlighted it or underlined it, that would be the takeaway that I would want.
Yeah, that's a really great idea.
Thank you.
I have another idea. First of all, I would suggest that you read the passages. I know that it's hard to always be able to do that, but if you can, I would do that. But I would also suggest that you look into the Charlotte Mason method of narration and ask her to just tell you back what she read. Often that will help a student be able to answer those types of questions. And so rather than jumping right to answering those types of questions, spend some time working on her narration skills, build those up, and then have her, instead of just telling you, write them down for you. So tell it back in print, and then begin to start to answer those questions. It's okay if they're still learning these skills. That's the point of an education. So start where she is instead of necessarily where she's expected to be. Sometimes you have to build those skills with the student rather than just expecting them to jump in where the book expects them to be. That's okay. That's a part of using the curriculum as a tool.
And I think that's what I like about Writing Strands, is Writing Strands doesn't tell you what to think. Like it's not, this is what you just read, this is what you should believe. It's, let's use our brains and think creatively, like, what are they trying to say to us? It's getting you to think, because there are a lot of adults being attacked by flies.
I am. It's
there are
terrible.
a lot of adults who are unable to actually pull relevant information from things. Jessica, what say you?
Well, I think the advice that you guys gave is really good, but I think something really just to simplify it is I would recommend if she's enjoying those longer books, continue to let her read those longer books, but for the purpose of the assignment, choose something like a children's book, choose something with a really short story. So that way you can walk her through that process and do it with her, but yet you're not having to spend hours reading all of the material that she's reading. This goes back to kind of the language lesson 6 thing that we discussed before, and where I'm seeing really in that same exact area, I'm seeing growth in my children. And what language lesson 6 has them do is they read one of the passages from the 10-minute Bible journey, and what are the 6 takeaways? What are the 6 main things from that passage? And so you can walk her through it if she's doing smaller portions, which makes it more manageable for her and more manageable for you as a busy homeschool mom than sitting down and having to read through all this material. Break it down into smaller chunks. And then as she starts to really master that, you can start increasing the amount of material she's consuming before you're kind of going back to that same concept.
Yes. Awesome.
Yep.
Jonathan said, does British literature cover Shakespeare? If so, how thoroughly, considering it for our 16-year-old Shakespearean? I believe it does cover Shakespeare. I wouldn't say that it's a thorough study of Shakespeare himself. I mean, it touches on, there's an overview, and I think that there's a Shakespeare.
I'm just going to be honest. I don't know. I look at so much curriculum that I lose track. So I don't know the specific of that answer to that.
Jonathan, there is a look inside on the website. And if you look at the look inside, you'll see what topics are covered. And you'll also be able to see like some of the other authors that are covered. It would be the same depth for Shakespeare as what you're going to see in the preview of that. And you'll see everybody that's covered in that. So that's probably what I would look at. If you're looking for a comprehensive survey of Shakespeare, I don't think you're going to see that. I think you'd want to look for something much more focused on him. Okay. Mary Kay says, does language lessons for living education give alphabetizing practice and teach dictionary use? Oh my goodness. I could answer this one.
Okay.
If so, at which level? Well, Mary Kay, I know that it does. Students create their own dictionaries. Like they actually they prepare words that mean something to them. They could do illustrations and the definition. So there's actually a lot of work, and some students really love. I loved when the series first came out. We have people who'd be like, my kid would not enjoy creating a dictionary, and then you'd have the post that said, okay, I was wrong. My kid actually loves creating a dictionary.
I'm probably one of those that expects my kids to moan and groan about it, but I make them do it, and then they end up loving it.
Is it third grade that starts?
No, it starts right off in first grade. Yeah.
With a
it starts
dictionary?
right off in level
Okay,
one.
it's bigger.
Yeah, it is. And they don't have to, they can just draw a picture and you can adapt it any way that you want. But often when they're starting in level 2, you're going to start working more with alphabetizing. It just increases as the levels go.
Yeah, Jessica, do your kids enjoy dictionary work?
Yes, and we've kind of changed it up each year that we've done it, kind of adapted. Once again, going back to that, just figuring out what works best for you. So my third grader this year is actually not using the dictionary pages. He is creating his dictionary with index cards. So I have letter stamps. And so one day of the week, he stamps out all of his words on index cards. And I like that. I like the stamps because they're having to individually look for each of the letters. So they're really having to think through what they're doing. And then over the next 2 days, he writes sentences for each of them on the card. And then he utilizes an actual dictionary and looking up the words for words that he doesn't already know the meaning. So he knows how to create a sentence, and then he's alphabetizing them in an index card holder.
And it's great for spelling and vocabulary building. I really recommend that people use it. Don't just dismiss it and think your kid automatically isn't going to enjoy it. And if they do struggle with it, then try to find out why and address those things to make it fun.
I love it for the vocabulary component because sometimes people look at language lessons and they kind of go, well, where's the vocabulary? Well, the vocabulary is interwoven. And so it feels so natural. And they're real words instead of teaching them all these random words that we don't really use in everyday conversation. They're words that they will use. And so, and that's not the only way vocabulary is interwoven, but that's one aspect. And it's a really great one.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Christina asked, I'm the first year homeschooling mom of a 4th grader and a 2nd grader. How far into the math or language arts curriculum can you tell if they need to go up or down a level? Kristen?
Well, first of all, you want to make sure that you've used the placement guides or the placement tests, depending on what subject, and make sure that you've done that part of it to make sure that they're placed properly. But I would say I would give it through the first quarter. If they're still really struggling, then you might want to bring it back. But often they just need to brush up on some skills. So just pay attention to the things that they're just kind of missing. And you might want to just take a pause and brush them up. Sometimes, if you've done the placement guide, you've looked through it all, you're pretty confident, or they've taken the placement test and they've tested where they should be. Often it's just a matter of brushing some things up. What would you say, Jessica?
I agree with what you're saying. Definitely start off with the placement tests and the placement guide for language arts. If you chose your levels based on that, then, just kind of watch what's going on, pay attention to how they're doing with their lessons. If you did not start with that, even if you have already purchased courses, I would actually stop for a moment and go back and review those, do the math placement tests, look at the language placement guide. And like you said, sometimes it's just, if they're struggling with something, it's just pausing the books for a little bit and doing your own thing using some of the ideas from the books. But then there's other times when you really do need to change the level.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we probably need to speed up a little bit. So
Okay.
Kathleen asks, my youngest will be using language lessons too. She did level 1 in foundation phonics last year. She doesn't like reading, even though she can read full sentences in books like Go Dog Go. How can I build her confidence? She has stated she wants to do the phonics book again.
I'd probably consider doing the phonics book again, honestly. The important thing when it comes to reading right now is really to foster that enjoyment and not to destroy her confidence. And so I would consider that as one possible thing. Another thing is to not push it too hard, not to act like her loving reading means the world. Take that gentle approach, let her help pick out books. I do that every year. I let my kids pick out what books that they're gonna read. Sometimes I have to say, okay, I call them junk books, like candy. I will let them pick a couple of books that are short or really not all that educational, but then I tell them, okay, for the next 4 that you pick out, they have to be, this type of book. So allowing her to have some choice in what book she's going to read, doing reading to her, co-reading, all of those things are good tools to get a student to enjoy reading, but I wouldn't stress about it. I would just work at going slow. Like I said, consider redoing the phonics if that's what she wants to do.
Kathleen also asks, my oldest is 2 years behind in math and language arts. 7th grade will be doing level 5 this year. He's improving over time. My husband is concerned about him catching up. Any advice? I do. I transferred to a private school that did testing when you went into the school. And I came out of a public school and they placed me in a 5th grade. So I went in 8th grade, but I was doing 5th grade work. And the constant stress of having to catch up really overshadowed the fact that I was learning. And I would say, be careful about the catching up part of this. If your student is growing, learning, and developing skills, then they're where they need to be. And they will continue to grow, right? It didn't stop me. I graduated, I went to college. I've been successful in my career, and I've used a lot of math over that time. So catching up was just something because it was based on what numbers were on a page. And so I would say if he's doing the work that he needs to be doing and he's learning and growing, then he's where he needs to be. And as he continues to grow, there's a lot of ways when you get to high school. I did algebra, and then I took business math, I took accounting. It wasn't all higher math levels that counted for my math credits, but it certainly applied to where I went in life. Would you guys have anything to add to that?
I would speak to the language arts part of it. For language arts, I wouldn't be as concerned about catching up as much as getting him to the point that he can write a high school level paper. And so that's not really all that hard to do. And so I had a student that wasn't quite ready to jump into any of the writing strands and all of that. So we hung out in language lessons a little bit longer. And so we're actually transitioning from level 6 into high school. And he's doing just fine. He'll be able to write high school level papers and all of that. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that. If you're going to focus on doing any catch-up work, I wouldn't go faster through math, but that's where I would look is it at math. What I would do is we would use in our kids' situations, we would use the summertime. And I wouldn't necessarily push real hard and strenuous, but it maybe 3 or 4 days a week, have him working in his math as long as it's not becoming real discouraging.
Okay, Elizabeth says, I have a 7-year-old that is reading chapter books. We finished level 2 living language and will be using level 3 this year. She doesn't like writing even though she can. Any suggestions for motivation? Jessica.
Well, I think once again, I don't know why she doesn't like writing. So
it could be stamina.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much.
She's very ideas.
She's
Yeah.
very young. So I would say pay attention to her not liking it. Don't push too hard, because I don't know that if you push too hard, you're not really going to see a benefit. You're only going to see her shut down further. And so the thing about it is, like we've been talking about this whole time, is you take the curriculum and you make it work for your child. So she can go into language lessons 3 if she is able to, if all the other components of the course are fine for her, and it's just the amount of writing that is kind of a hang up, then I would say only require 1 sentence when she does the writing. Back off some of it. Maybe you work on her giving you oral answers for a lot of it, and you write down some of her stuff, right? And you kind of start modeling for her what it looks like to get her thoughts written down on the paper. What you want to do is you want to encourage her to think through and to start putting those thoughts that she has into words. And that can be a really, really difficult thing for a lot of kids. So just start working through it verbally with her. Write down what she has to say. You could have her maybe do like 1 sentence of copy work after you've written those things down for her. But just because level 3 says write 3 sentences doesn't mean she has to write 3 sentences. So meet her where she's at and just watch. You don't want to have her still in the same place a year from now. So you do want to see growth and progress, but it doesn't have to match what the book says either.
Absolutely.
To go outside the box a little bit, it doesn't hurt sometimes to set them up for success. Like if there's somebody that you could text or they could type an email and you could put them and say, hey, I want you to do this report in an email to grandma and let grandma know. I don't need you to correct it. I just need you to say, I love your thoughts. I love the way you wrote this. Like just begin to praise them for the win that they did. And so maybe like writing on a page, just moving into another format and rewarding them for the behavior of, I love that you pulled out the concept, and then the reward getting back from somebody else that they respect or whatever, just in addition.
Yep.
Okay, Jessica Gillenwater says, I have one more question. I may be overthinking. My oldest kiddo is going to be starting 8th grade this year. Last year was our first homeschooling and we did World Story 2. Since that was 7th grade bundle, Allie was never taught anything about American history, so I did purchase America's Story 1 for her. I know it's for younger levels. Do you think I'm doing the right thing, or should I purchase something else that could catch her up, if that makes sense?
I don't see a problem with it personally. I'd probably do all 3 for the year because she's older and she'll be able to handle it. I don't know that I would necessarily do all the worksheets. I would probably pick and choose what I wanted for the worksheets and let her do it. You could have her doing some extra assignments. You could have her doing some reports, timeline some things, studying up if you have some living history books, or just studying up on certain characters that she's interested in. So those are just a few of the ideas that I might use with my own student. What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry. We've been doing summits all day. So
my brain just kind of went, okay.
Yep, that sounds good.
Your answer was sounding good to me. No, okay. So now I've got my brain refocused. I agree with you on what you were saying. There's lots of different ways to deal with it, however you want to do it. My older kids didn't go through America's Story. And so I put them in World Story where they were at, and we did America's Story as a read aloud. You can use all 3 of the courses in 1 year. You can use one of the courses and then add in America's Struggle to Become a Nation, or the Fight for Freedom, or, right. You're
it's all
not
education. You're
not in high school yet. So once you get to high school, yeah, you want to fill the certain credit requirements that you have, but you're in 8th grade. So I wouldn't stress about it.
And Jess, because I like you, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. This is Jess Gillenwater. I like you too, Jessica, but just clarify. Okay. Don't neglect the last book of world history. I think the modern age is really important. A lot of times in homeschooling, we focus on the classical or the ancients. We focus on Renaissance and all of the dark ages and all of that. And then we kind of neglect what's happened in the last couple hundred years. And that's where we're living. The transformation that we're experiencing has happened just in the last 100 years. And so, you're going to cover American history again in school and learn about that. So make sure you kind of come back to the modern age, because I think what makes the world story that we've got so unique is that it really does have a comprehensive modern age to it.
Yeah, and you could do both.
Yes.
You could do America's Story as a read aloud, or just as a reading, have her read it.
Yes. Jill asked, does the digital books count for the 1, 2, 3 discounts? And Jennifer also asked if the bundling option works for the digital or just hardcover. It doesn't work for the digital books. The digital books are already priced at a 30%. And then as part of this summit, we have a coupon code, Summit, SUMMIT, which if you use that coupon code, Jess always smiles when I say it. I'm wondering, am I smelling that wrong? Summit only has one T. Am I smelling it? It's been a long day. It's been a long day.
Like, what's he talking about?
Last time I said it, she snickered, and I thought, I'm wondering if I'm spelling that wrong.
No, you spelled it. You spelled it correctly.
Thank you.
Trying to, have a smile on my face so I look happy and inviting.
That's good. That's good to have. I know you've been counseled sometimes to be more happy.
Oh boy.
Yes. So use the code Summit. And you will get an extra 10% on your books, on the digital books this week only. Christina said, I did the placement test, kind of hard for language arts. 4th grader is very advanced reader. Local library struggles to find reading for her that is not too mature. What should I look for and see? Should I bump her up a level in language arts? I'm guessing on the placement test, as our local school was not very transparent about what they were teaching. My student was usually bored. When I gave her the writing test, she wrote 10 sentences.
Well, I would want to know how well she wrote them. Were they interesting? Did they include adjectives? Did she really draw the reader in? How was her punctuation? Was there variety within those sentences? So the fact that she could write 10 sentences, that was great, that she had the stamina for it, but I would go by more the quality. When it comes to placement, I would not go by her reading level. As far as reading levels go, that's why I didn't assign specific books, because kids are all over the place with their reading abilities and also their interests and their reading stamina. And so I want families to pick the books that are best suited for their student. I would go towards the writing ability.
Good. All right, last question. Jennifer said, I would love to hear about your success in launching your older homeschooled students. Has homeschooling given them a great advantage?
Yeah. I know you're chomping at the bit to answer that one.
I'm ready to spring.
Yeah, he's like, say your answer so that I can say mine. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't do it any other way. I really wouldn't. I went into homeschooling my children with an expectation that all my kids were going to go to college. That was just a given. And
man plans his way, but the Lord directs their steps.
Yeah. And so we have had kids go to college, but we've also had, most of ours have not. And they have hit the workforce pretty successfully. So yeah, it's definitely given them an advantage. I would say it's not just academic, it's spiritual, which is the most important thing. And in addition to that, it's also surprising to some a social advantage, because they are communicating with such a broader group of people. They're not just with kids their own age. And so my kids don't bat an eye at younger communicating, talking to younger kids, and they don't bat an eye at talking to adults. One of our kids, one of his favorite things to do is to hang out at the coffee shop with all the old men. He loved it. And so my kids don't really think in those terms, like some do. And yeah, I mean, often in the workforce, they can't believe our kids are the age that they are. They always think that they're older.
Yeah, I think we've been able to give them the advantage of capacity, that they're not limited by their education. They have a capacity for learning. We focused on emotional intelligence. That's been big for us as a family. I think that they're very emotionally intelligent. They're far more emotionally intelligent than me oftentimes. I think
shake my head, yeah.
it's not a good place to bobblehead.
Sorry.
One of my favorite stories just happened recently with Brittany, that some of you know Brittany, and she used to be one of my co-hosts here, and she recently was at a convention. She was hired by a PR firm to go and represent a company, a large company, at a convention. And so she's at the convention. She really didn't know anything. She didn't know anybody, but she grew up at homeschool conventions. She grew up with people. She knew how to sell because we had a business, and we were focusing on that. We focused a lot on her communication skills, her presence, her manners. And so she saw this group of men come into the convention hall, and they came over, and she said, "Oh, would you like to participate in what we're doing?"
And they were towering over her and kind of a little bit intimidating.
I think the guy's like 6'5", 6'6", and so Brittany's Kristen's height, and
it was a little intimidating because he was very confident and very sure of himself.
And she's like, "Oh," I began to shrink, and then all of a sudden she caught herself and says, "No, I'm not going to shrink. I'm going to stand present. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be emotionally intelligent because I can do this, and I've earned the right to be here, et cetera, et cetera." And so the guy was like trying to shake her, and she was just like right back, giving him answers and everything. And then he goes, "Well, what's your name?" And she goes, "My name is Brittany." And he goes, "Well, I'm the CEO of this company." And he said, "You've impressed us." And so she actually just got hired by them and is starting to work for them next week. And it's a cool story because as a mom and dad, that's what we've trained our kids to do. Like, you step into a situation, you be present, you own it, you can learn anything. I mean, I could become an expert overnight about something and impress you with how much I know tomorrow. Like, it's just too easy with knowledge, but wisdom and capacity and application is a whole different story. And so that's what's been important to us, and we've seen it. I've watched, my son went into sales communication. He loved the challenge. He taught himself things. Now he went into a new industry, and he brought in all kinds of things. And he's in his 20s, and he just got like a huge assignment, and it's a little big for him, but I'm happy that he's a little miserable in it because he is too. He's challenged, and he knows that he's going to have to learn and kind of fight his way out. So we've seen over and over, like, you could not convince me that there's a better way to educate, disciple, and train our children than homeschooling. You could not.
Right. One of our sons, he went to trade school he was certified in a whole bunch of things that launched him onto a career path. Now he's come to the point where he's ready he feels that in order to take the next step in his career, that he needs some college. But at this point, he's ready for that, and it's needed.
Yes. But what's cool about his story is we make networking a big thing. Like, when you meet somebody, you esteem them as greater than yourself. You treat them the way you would want to be treated. And so he's awesome at networking. He was able to get into a phenomenal company that he grew in very quickly, and now is giving him the opportunity where they're actually going to pay for his schooling. Right. And he just got promoted into a new department at the same time. So in that,
a prestigious department.
I mean, he's one of these stories, I know we're going long, but he's one of these stories where he hated books. He was absolutely brilliant, but hated books.
And he was a phenomenal student. I mean, school came very easy to him, but by high school, he wanted to be doing.
So if you've heard me talk about him at all before, he's the one that we actually would go and buy snow blowers, lawn mowers, chainsaws, weed whackers, and he'd spend all night out in the shed cleaning them, tuning them up, and then put them out for sale and resell them. And what he learned and developed and his capacity to negotiate and talk with people, he's just a natural in that. And we've seen it with our other daughter, like all of our kids.
Carrie is the author of Foundation Phonics and the Let's Talk Science series.
Yeah.
Joy just got married and she's working for a company and doing phenomenal there. And yeah, I mean, I have no regrets whatsoever. You know, in every single category of life, I feel homeschooling has given our students an edge.
And I love the fact that what was said earlier today, that while we're homeschooling, the Lord is homeschooling us.
Yes.
And so homeschooling wasn't just about our kids.
Mhm.
I have grown so much as a person in the last 25 years of homeschooling. I remember the first convention when I was exposed to some men who held their families in esteem and their spiritual walk, and the impact that had on me. And just as I've had to be a better leader, because my kids, I can't blame a teacher. I can't
Right.
blame anybody but myself. So
I lack patience.
yes.
You know, I do. I don't like teaching.
And I would say,
I know that sounds so terrible. I enjoy writing curriculum and I enjoy teaching that way, but school always came easy for me. So it's very hard for me when my kid doesn't just get it, not to get frustrated. And there are times where I've had to bring him in because he struggled more. And so he actually is better equipped at helping.
I'm more empathy for the less enthused.
Yes. So sometimes he's more creative in coming up with some ideas to address that. But again, that's part of the Lord equipping us and going to him for wisdom. Like I have to recognize I'm going to hurt this child, not physically, but I'm going to hurt their love of learning because of my frustration. So I need to step back. And sometimes it means I have to call in extra help. And so, yeah, I mean, and I've had to work on that. I've had to work on patience. The Lord has had to develop patience
I agree.
within me.
I
Yet
agree.
you love having somebody else on the.
I want to add something really quick, because my kids have not graduated yet, obviously, but I am a homeschool graduate. So I have had the experience of being the homeschooled one. And so from that side of things, I appreciate the sacrifice that my parents made to homeschool me. And I definitely don't feel like it hurt me in any way. I feel like all it did was really all those things that you discussed, it set me up for having success. So, and even like, so my husband went to public school. And when we talked about, having our kids and what we were going to do schooling wise, he was kind of like, I don't know about this. And then as he was like, well, homeschoolers are kind of weird. And I was like, I was homeschooled.
Yeah, it was okay to marry you. You weren't all that weird, I guess.
Yeah. So then he was like, yeah, but you're different. And I was like, okay, well, let's kind of talk through this. And when we kind of really looked over everything, we realized, or he realized, I already knew that homeschooling really was going to set our kids up for success in the long run. And I see that with my siblings. And then, with all of the people that were around and the experiences that we've had. But on the other side of things for your kids are going to be so appreciative of the sacrifices that you make and what you're doing for them, because you really are setting them up for success. I was able to do things that my friends had no access or capability of doing because they were at school all day long. And so I was able to pursue interest. I was able to grow in many ways. I was able to work in different capacities than they were able to work. So even from the child's perspective, you're doing a great thing for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I
absolutely.
appreciate you weighing in on that.
I totally forgot that you were homeschool graduate. So
I
that
did
was
not. I was actually going to say we're the old dogs here, but what excites me more than anything is watching the next generation. Like, we've invested our lives into serving the next generation. And that was our legacy for us, has been, let's pass the faith to the next generation. And I believe the sleeping giant right now is homeschoolers. And so when I get to see someone like Jessica, who was homeschooled, all the sacrifices that were made by her family, and I get to see all of a sudden her stepping into the places that the Lord has for her, like writing the Bible curriculum, like all the help that she's offered. She helps thousands of people homeschool.
and she reviews curriculum.
Yes.
She's one of the people that, especially if we have one that we really want some, good detailed review done, that we say, hey, Jessica.
I get excited because it's like, yes, there are more dry bones out there that are just waiting to be awakened. And the army that the Lord has already prepared, the remnant that he's prepared, will awaken and the gospel will go forward. And so that's what's exciting to us. And I think all the seeds that you're sowing right now, only the Lord knows the fruit that's going to produce. So, well, we've gone long tonight, and hopefully this was helpful to people. I know our eyes are all starting to glaze over, and we've got another full day tomorrow. So we're going to call it a night. But thank you for joining us. And we look forward to connecting with everybody tomorrow.